בכיתי, אבל בסוף היה לי חצי נחמה. אני אספר לכם מה קרה. הצער הגדול, רואה Hesped וגילה פרחה בתנור, הצער הגדול והלב כואב והאבל כבד. הסיפור הזה, אני מספר אותו כדי שנלמד ממנו הרבה דברים. לא סתם אני מספר את הסיפור הזה, מה שקרה. כאשר השמש שקעה ביום שישי אחרי הצהריים, וההכנות לשבת הסתיימו, התחלתי להתפלל בבית כרגיל, כי לא רציתי להשאיר אותה לבד. הייתי מתפלל מנחה וערבית יום שישי בבית, כדי להיות איתה ביחד. הדלקנו נרות ועשינו קבלת שבת וקידשנו ליל שבת, ובירכתי תמיד, אני מברך אותה ברכת כהנים. מדי שבת אני מכין את השולחן, כי היא לא הייתה מסוגלת להכין, מאכיל את כל המאכלים. בשבת גם היה לנו מאכל מיוחד שהעוזרת הכינה, את המרק. היא אכלה לאט, ואני אכלתי יותר מהר. בדרך כלל, כשאני גומר, אני מחכה לה, ולפני שאני מציע לה את המיטה, ואומר לה, אני מניח אותה לישון, מכניס אותה למיטה לישון. כל שבת ככה זה ככה, כל יום של ליל שבת. עכשיו, אני הלכתי לנוח איזה פחות מ5 דקות במיטה, ופתאום אני קם בקפיצה כזאת, ואני רואה שהיא לא בשולחן, בדרך כלל היא בשולחן. היא קוראת תהילים, אני רואה, מחפש בבית, אני רואה הדלת פתוחה. אמרתי, וואי, הדלת פתוחה. משהו עלול לקרות. באתי אל הקדוש, אמרו, אל תעשה לי את זה, אל תעשה לי את זה. משהו עלול לקרות. לא ציפיתי לגרוע ביותר, אמרתי, היא טעתה בדרך. הלכה במירנדה, פנתה בוויצט, בכיוון מרתה, ואז מה שקרה, היא חצצה את הכביש בלי לדעת. כאשר התנועה נמצאת, אוטו אחד עצר, והאוטו השני המשיך, לא ראה אותה ודרס אותה למוות. ואנשים, היו שם אנשים שרצו לתפוס אותה שלא תיכנס ללכת בכביש, ועזבה אותם והמשיכה בכביש. זה לא יאומן, כל הסיפור הזה. כל הסיפור הזה זה דבר שלא, כל כך צירוף מקרים שיש פה, שרק מהשם יכול להיות. כל שבת אני יושב איתה, נותן לה כל מדברים תורה ולוקח אותה למיטה. שבת ישנתי קצת מגוע, כמה דקות לפני זה התעוררתי, אף פעם בלילה היא לא יוצאת לבד, אין מצב כזה שהיא יוצאת לבד. היא פתאום יוצאת לבד בלילה בחושך, פותחת את הדלת ויוצאת, הדלת הייתה פתוחה, והלכה לכיוון זה, ולא ידענו איך היא נמצאת, ושהיא צעקנו להצלה וזה, שמענו אמבולנסים וזה, זה היה כבר מקרה. כן, עכשיו, בסוף אני אגיד לכם למה זה קרה, ובזה היה לנחמה. למה כל הסיפור הזה קרה, זה לא סתם קרה. נחמתי בזה שזה קרה, אבל היה לי חצי נחמה. כתוב בפסוק, זכרתי חסד נעורייך, אחריי במדבר, בארץ לא זרועה, אל תקרא נעורייך, אלא נערייך. זאת אומרת, במכת החושך, הרי 80% מעם ישראל מתו, 20% רק יצאו, אבל הילדים מ-80% הם לא חטאו, הם לא עשו כלום. אז מי שלקח אותם זה ה-20%, זה הם טיפלו בהם, וכל משפחה הייתה מרובת ילדים, כי ההורים שלהם מתו, והילדים לא חטאו. אז הקדוש ברוך הוא זוכר את החסד, שאלו שיצאו ממצרים 20% עשו לנערים האלו. והם לקחו את חסותם, שהקדוש ברוך הוא גם גילה טיפלה בהרבה ילדים במסירות נפש ובאהבה גדולה, זה היה חשוב לי מאוד, וזכתה והתפללה לנכדים, יש לנו 27 נכדים שהולכים בדרך התורה. יותר מ50 שנה חיינו ביחד, ואני מעיד שהייתה בעל, אנשים מעידים, לא רק אני, שהייתה בעלת צדקה, בעלת חסד, וידה פתוחה לכל צער, וכרגע אנחנו צריכים לקרוא אותה, מה שקורה בדורות שלנו, שאנחנו, האבות, קוברים את הילדים, במקום שהילדים יקברו אותנו. זה רק בדורות האחרונים, זה לא היה קיים באף דורות. הדורות שלנו, לצערנו הרב, זה דבר מאוד גרוע. קברתי את ביתי נעמי ז"ל לפני 6 חודשים, ועכשיו אני צריך ללכת לקבור את אשתי האהובה, שהייתה אישה מיוחדת. היא עזרה להרבה אנשים. העוזר שטיפלה בה יומם ביום, היא מספרת איזה בעלת חסד הייתה. היא לא הייתה מודעת לדברים שהיא עושה, אבל כשהיא ראתה פועלים עובדים בכביש שם ביום חם, היא אמרה בוא ניתן להם משהו לשתות, חם. העוזרת התפלאה. דוגמה אחת, אני יכול להביא לכם, יש הרבה דוגמאות, אבל הייתה עובדת בתורה אור הרבה שנים, ובאותו כיתה הייתה ילדה אחת שהייתה נצרכת לצרכים מיוחדים בכיתה. אז אשתי הייתה מטפלת בה במסירות נפש, ללא תשלום וללא תמורה. היא לא רצה לקבל תמורה. ואז הייתה בהיריון, אז היא אמרה, מה שאני מבקש מהקדוש ברוך הוא, שיהיה ילד בריא ושלם, וילך בדרך התורה. וזה מה שהיא ביקשה. והקדוש ברוך הוא מילא את מבוקשה, אבל בלידה שלו, אני הייתי בלידה שלו, הוא נולד בכלל בחסד. המיילדת, היא לא הייתה יודעת לילד את הילד. הילד יצא, ובמקום ללחוץ במקומות הנכונים כדי לשחרר אותו, הילד יצא כחול. כמעט באה המיילדת אחרת, והילדה אותו והצילה אותו, ממש הצילה אותו. אז בזכות זה מה שהיא עשתה, המעשה הזה שהיא עשתה, גרם מכך שקיבלה דבר שהיא ביקשה אותו וקיבלה אותו. ובזכות זה נולד לנו הרב ליאור, בעזרת השם שהוא מורה דרך בניו יורק ומורה הוראה. כאשר אתה רואה את הילדים והנכדים, כולם הולכים בדרך התורה, זה בזכותה, היא דאגה לזה כל הזמן, שהדבר החשוב ביותר זה יהיה חינוך הילדים. זה הדבר עמד בשנים האחרונות, היא איבדה את הזיכרון, וכאשר תהליך זה קורה, היא הרגישה שאין לה מה לעשות בעולם הזה. אני לא יכולה לקיים מצוות, מה שווה לי החיים האלה? אם אני לא יכולה מצוות, מה שווים לי החיים האלו? מתה אנוכי, עדיף שאני אמות מה שאני אחיה. לא שווה לי לחיות, שהיא לא רצתה לחיות, היא הרגישה שבעולם הזה שהייתה עושה כל מיני מצוות ומעשים טובים, היא לא מסוגלת לעשות, אז לא שווה לי החיים. אז כל פעם שלוקחת כדורים וזה, אני לא רוצה לקחת, אני רוצה למות. לא שווה לי חיים כאלה, מה החיים האלו שווים לי אם אני לא עושה מצוות וכלום, בשביל מה אני חיה בכלל? זה קו המחשבה שלה היה. וזה לא נכון, אם לא מתה אנוכי אין טעם לחיים, לא עושים מצוות ולא עושים מעשים טובים, זה הייתה מחשבה וצריכה להיות גם לנו. אותה מחשבה שאנחנו חיים בעולם הזה, אם אנחנו לא עושים מצוות ולא חיים, אז לא שווה לנו כל העולם הזה. אומרים שצרת רבים חצי נחמה. בסוף אני אגיד לכם מה הנחמה שהייתה לי אחרי שכתבתי את ההספד. אז אומרים, מה זה צרת רבים חצי נחמה? צרת רבים זה צרה גדולה מאוד, מה זה חצי נחמה בכלל? איך אפשר להגיד כזה מושג חצי נחמה? צרת רבים חצי נחמה, איך אתה יכול להגיד כזה דבר? זה לא מתקבל על הדעת. אז התחדש לי הדבר הזה, בשעה שישבתי עם מיטל, העומית ז"ל, בשבעה. אז שבאו 3 נציגים מניו יורק מהבית כנסת. אז אמרתי, וואו, איזה דבר זה? עזבו את הכל. ובאו מניו יורק באופן מיוחד לשבת שבעה איתם. אז יצא לי החידוש הזה, אמרתי, כאשר באים אנשים מכל מקום רחוקים וקרובים, והגיעו מבית כנסת במרחק של טיסות, אז אמרתי, הצרה אלו שיושבים שבעה היא חצי נחמה. זאת אומרת, הצרה שאנחנו יושבים שבעה, שאנחנו רואים איך אנשים עוזרים, מנחמים אותנו ועוזרים לנו, אז הצרה שלנו היא חצי נחמה, לא שלהם. הצרה של אלו שיושבים שבעה הם חצי נחמה. כי אנחנו רואים שאנשים משתתפים בצער שלנו ועושים כל הדברים ועוזרים ומסייעים וזה, זה הכוונה, לא צרת רבים חצי נחמה, צרה שבאים אלינו ומנחמים אותנו, אז בשבילנו זה חצי נחמה, לא בשבילנו. אז זה הכוונה, צרת רבים חצי נחמה. הדבר המיוחד לגבי הנפטרת, נשמתה בצרור החיים בזכות החסד והמצוות והמעשים טובים שהייתה במשך חייה. בזכות תינוקות של בית רבן שהתחנכו בזכותה, בזכות הנכדים שאומרים תהילים ומתפללים לכבודה. אם כן, היה לה רצון, היא ביקשה למעשה, היא ביקשה למות, היא ביקשה, והקדוש ברוך הוא שמע את התפילה שלה. היא אמרה, וזו הייתה הנחמה, כי היא ביקשה את הדבר הזה. למה היא ביקשה? כי היא אמרה, אין לי מה לעשות בחיים האלה, מה זה שווה לי החיים? אז כל פעם שנותנים לה תרופות, אז היא אומרת, אני רוצה למות. אמרתי לה, למה? אמרה לי, כאילו, היא לא עושה כלום בעולם הזה, אין לה תכלית בעולם הזה, כי מה שתישאר, שהקדוש ברוך הוא שומע תפילה של צדיק, אז אם היה יכול לרפות אותו, היה לרפא אותו, אבל אם לא ריפא אותו, אז הוא שומע את התפילה שלו, זה מה שהיא ביקשה, זה מה שהיא קיבלה. אז לכן היה לי חצי נחמה בדבר הזה, שהיא הלכה, ודבר שלא הגיוני שהיא תלך, לא הגיוני שאני ארדם כמה דקות, היא תעזוב את הבית, תלך, בדרך כלל יושבת, כל הדברים האלו קורים, שהיא הולכת בכביש, למה היא הולכת בכביש? היא חצה את הכביש בכלל. כל כך הרבה צירוף מקרים, שזה לא יכול להיות שזה יקרה. הקדוש ברוך הוא הכל, הקדוש ברוך הוא רוצה לקחת אותה, ואז היא התפטרה מן העולם, זה מה שהיא חיפשה וזה מה שהיא מקבלה. אז אומרים, למה אנחנו רוצים את ההספד? ההספד, אומרים שמעכבים את הפורענות ומטיבים בדרכנו מעשינו. כשאנחנו שומעים הספד על מישהו, אז זה לא רק הספד להגדיל את הבן אדם הזה וזה, אלא זה בשבילנו. כי אנחנו יודעים שאנחנו חיים במקום כזה, שאם אנחנו לא עושים מצוות ומעשים טובים, אז כל העולם לא שווה בשבילנו. וזה הנחמה הגדולה שהשאירה לדורות הבאים. עוד דבר הוא אומר פה.
תודה.
זכרתי חסד נעורייך, אליך, זה אמרנו. ההספד חשוב לנפטר, וזה חצי הנחמה. זאת אומרת, ברגע שאתה יודע מה התכלית של הבן אדם ומה זה, ואתה יודע לקראת מה היא הלכה ומה היא ביקשה ומה זה, אז זה נותן לך נחמה. זה הדבר היחיד שנותן לך נחמה. ועל זה אמרתי שחצי נחמה היה לי, בגלל זה מה שהיא אמרה את הדברים האלו, היא הבינה מה שהיא אומרת, והיא הבינה שאין לה מה לעשות בעולם הזה, אין לה מה לעשות. עכשיו אנחנו, בזכות הנכדים שאומרים תהילים ומתפללים לעילוי נשמתה, אנחנו זכינו שיהיה לנו 27 נכדים שכולם הולכים בדרך התורה, ונקווה שלא תראו יוצר צער, כולם לא יראו צער, ואני מודה לכולם שבאו להספד הזה והתחלקו בינינו בצער וביגון שיש לנו. תודה לכם.
שמעון,
I'd like to call on Rabbi Krause.
Gila.
Teres, to us in Yeshiva, Teres Emes, where she was a Mora for 25 plus years. She was Mora Gila to us. Now we have to give a Kavod Achrein to the Nefteres Gila Bas Daniel. Tein Nishmos Tzrua B'Tzrach Chaim. Today I was speaking to one of the Moras that the Nefteres worked with, Mora Esther Morgan. She was her assistant for 25 years, in addition to being an assistant to Nachman Mendel, Zechrein Levracha, and other Moras in our yeshiva. So, Mora Esther mentioned that she felt it was a privilege for her to have been able to work with Mora Gila for those 25 years. She was, in her words, an Isha Chashuva Ad Ma'od. And whenever she would mention over the years to Mora Gila how fortunate she felt to be able to work with her. Mora Gila would say, on the contrary, how fortunate she feels to be able to work as a Mora, as an assistant Mora in Torah's Emes. And for 25 years, we were zeicha to Kaisa Baruchu es B'nai Yisrael. Those 25 years, she was a bracha as she shared her talents with Yiddish Kinderlich, providing them with a yesod, a foundation for their future learning. The grades that she was an assistant for, whether it was a pre-1A class or a first grade, those are the years where children are transitioning to a regular school, whether it's from their home or from a preschool. But once they get into the regular school, it's a very daunting for many young children, and it's something that could affect them for later if they feel intimidated by their surroundings. And that's why it's so important that at that age, they have a moros that are nurturing, are loving, are caring, make the children feel that they're being embraced. And Mora Gila, Zechroina Levracha, she was the perfect person for that. There wasn't a time that there was a child that perhaps needed something that she wouldn't come to the administration, to the Anhola, and mention either a child, something is perhaps needed to be worked at the home, she doesn't bring her lunch, or perhaps she doesn't come properly combed and groomed, or perhaps she cries too often. That was in the Gashmias area, but she was also concerned with their Ruchnias. She would sometimes come to the office and share that maybe this parent needs to be spoken to because the child seems to be exposed too much. Perhaps the language is not as refined as it should be. So she was a Mora who was concerned with her students, Begashmias and Beruchnias. And one could see the dedication, the commitment, and the focus that she had, not only for her students, but one could see that in terms of her family as well. I think everyone will agree that she was a very special Akeres Abayis, that her focus and her mission and her goal was to produce a family of B'nai and B'nai Torah dedicated to Avodas Hashem. She was certainly an Akeres Abayis in every sense of the word. We say in Eishes Chayil, we say Tzoifia Halichos Beisa V'lechem Atzlos Lo Yisoichel. Tzoifia and Eishes Chayil looks out for Halichos Beisa, for the welfare of her family, V'lechem Atzlos Lo Yisoichel, and doesn't spare any efforts to see to it that what she looks for to be Halichos Beisa should come to fruition. And the Eishes Chayil continues with Kamu Voneha Vayashua, Bailo Vayahalalo. If someone were to doubt her commitment and her purpose and her sense of mission in being the Akeres Abayis, one only has to look at her children. Kamu Vanel, her children get up, Vayashua. Poshev Shat means they praise her. Baila, her husband, Vayahalalo, also praises her. But there's another Pshat in that pasuk as well. Kamu Vaneha, her children get up, Vayashruha, and they give her an ishur. And ishur means validation, a stamp of approval. One looks at her children, Kamu Vaneha, Vayashruha. They're ma'asher, they give the ishur to all of her efforts and her sacrifices. And the fact that lechem atzlo soichel, bailo vayahalalo. Look at her husband. Look what she did to her family as an Akeres Habayis. How many rubies do you have come to make a house call to take care of your car, but first it comes with a Dvar Torah. The last time that he came to my house to fix the car, first there had to be a Dvar Torah before you fix the car. That's because of the environment that was in that house. Kamu vaneha vayashrua, her children, whether it's Leor, who was an accomplished Talmid Chacham, or her efforts to make her bonois, Yisroel Ksherois, and Baruch Hashem, she was Zeicha, as we heard before, the children and grandchildren, Kulam Yereim Mishleimim, that's Kamu Vanea Vaishrua, Bailo Vayahalula. In this week's Parsha, this past week's Parsha, the Parsha that the Nefteres came up to Olam Haba, the pasuk says, "Batomas Dvaira, Meinekes Rivka." Dvaira, who was the Meinekes, the nursemaid of Rivka, she died. Batomas Rivka, Batomas Dvaira Meinekes Rivka. Vatikaver, and she was buried Tachas, underneath a tree, and the tree was called Aloin Bachus, a tree of crying. So Rashi brings a Chazal, Aloin Bachus. Bachus is a double bechiyah. It was a tree of not one bechiyah, but two bechiyos. It wasn't too long ago that we stood here as well and gave another Hesped. Now, for this family, it's this bechiyah, this Hesped is an Aloin Bachus, because it's not just a Hesped, a reminder of the Nefteres, but a reminder of the Avelis, that the family is still in that Avelis. And just as the Avelis is an Aloin Bachus, it's a double Avelis. However, the pasuk says, there's a pasuk in Yeshaya, Chazal tell us, when it says, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, why does it say a double Lashon, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami? Chazal say that Chotu b'kaflayim, Misnachlim b'kaflayim. When Klal Yisrael goes through a double machla, a double hit, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you suffered enough, Misnachlim b'kaflayim, I'll give you a double nechama. So we just asked that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give this mishpacha a double nechama. I was thinking today, Amir soll sein gesund, every Sunday would come to pick up the children from carpool. And in the passenger seat, every Sunday, was the Nefteres, Mora Gila. And even though, unfortunately, she was not the Mora Gila that we knew, and she had lost a lot of cognition. However, for whatever reason, when she came to carpool on Sundays, she would recognize me standing at one corner and Rabbi Goldenberg standing at another corner. Those two people she did recognize. Today, Amir came, there was no one in the passenger seat. But the truth of the matter is, now that she's in the Olam HaEmes, together with her precious daughter, we're misnachmen b'kaflayim, because now they'll both be in the driver's seat. Now they'll both be there to be able to watch over their mishpacha, to make sure that Kadosh Baruch Hu, haroifei l'shvurei leiv, will give chizuk to this mishpacha, chizuk to the children, chizuk to the grandchildren, chizuk to Ruby. And as we say in Eshes Chayo, Kamu v'nei v'ashrua, Bailo v'halalo. And to new law, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give her a mipri yadeha, from all of her amelus, all of the fruits of her labors. V'halulua, and they should praise her bashorim, in the gates of Shari Shamayim, Mahaseha. She should be a Melitza Yosher for an entire Mishpacha. Gila Hashem, Dimam Yal Kolponim, Kodesh Baruch Hu should be Misnachim, the Mishpacha, and all of Klal Yisrael.
Dahan. First and foremost, I'd like to express a deep gratitude. Ribono shel Olam. He gave me a mother that was the best mother I could ask for. There wasn't a more loving person, so committed. I couldn't ask for more. And I thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I recognize the Tovah that my entire existence is solely because of the personality and the person that she was. Solely. I also want to thank Avi HaYakar. I would come from New York because, as was mentioned by Kvod Harav Rabbi Krauss and by my father, my mother was no longer able to remember many things, and she had dementia. And I would come to visit every once in a while. When I would come, I would see how my father was so committed. I've never seen it. My father cutting salad, my father going to the store, my father sometimes taking her with him. Just such a turnaround for somebody who's 80 years old. To be so committed and to be such a resolve to change what he was so used to. But not only Abba, also my dear sister Oshrat, who always, not just the last 2 years, always, from the time she was born, she would take care of the house. She was my mom's right-hand man. And, of course, Amir, Noam, always there. My dear sister, Zichronah Livracha, Metali. People don't even know how much she was Moser Nefesh in times where you wouldn't even expect. It was not even possible. She should have been worrying about herself, and she was worrying about Ima. She was spending her time instead of with her own family. She was with my mother because Ima needed it, and there wasn't anybody for her. That was Mitali, and I want to thank all of them. And I want to think of more recent, the last few days, Rabbi Goldenberg, Usam Yamim Kalelot, put in tremendous effort to make sure that my mother's gufa, my mother's body, will be able to be released as soon as possible. All the Hatzalah that came to the scene as swift as they could on a Friday night, where people are generally home with their families and spending quality time. People were hours away to be helpful and to be there whatever it took. Me, on behalf of myself and on behalf of my entire family, we're indebted to every person that worked hard, whether it was Ziva, whether it was the other maids that helped with such mesirut nefesh to take care of my mother. I thank them all from the depth of my heart on behalf of myself and my family. when I come to explain who my mother is and who she was, the one sentence, if I had to summarize it, is a sentence that I heard quoted in the name of Rav Shach. Rav Shach said, they asked him, Hechi dami emunah. What does it mean to have emunah? And he says, if you want to know what emunah is, I suggest you go to the Shuka Bukharim and look at the Savtot, the grandmothers of the Shuka Bukharim, and there you will see emunah. There you could learn emunah, study it. And I think of my mother, and I think that there was such an aura of the past. It wasn't somebody of our generation. It was somebody that lived in a mentality that was maybe 100 years old of the Emunat Chachamim, maybe 200 years ago. Such a high level of commitment and devotion and thought and about relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was her. She was that Savta in the Shuka Bukharim. One of her famous, I think everybody has like a sort of statement that resonates with them in the Tanakh. Her statement that she carried for many years, as far as I knew her, that really, really hit home. Al tashlicheni le'et zikna, kichlot kochi al ta'azveni. That was something that I always felt it hit her heart. As a matter of fact, I didn't tell anybody, but there's a song that was played with those words, and I would make sure that it was never played when I was there, because I knew that it would hit her neshama very deeply, and she would ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Al tashlicheni le'et zikna. Don't leave me in my old age. Kichlot kochi. She did not want to be in a situation where she had no more abilities, where her faculties were not working. And the reason, the yesod, was because she didn't want to burden anybody else. Her whole essence was totally about giving. It wasn't actions. It was a mistake to call it actions. She didn't do actions of giving. Her essence was giving. It was her being. If you take away that, you take away the davar shaneshama tiluya bo. And she realized that. She always knew that. She always fretted. I'll give you one example. Very simple example. She would see workers working on a neighbor's lawn. Not even Jewish, not working. They're working regular. Whatever they were doing, construction or gardening or whatever else. She would go over and she would say, let's get them water. They're probably thirsty. They're working so hard. Let's go get them water. Let's go. I remember this when we were kids. We would be getting water for people. Here, take water. You need to drink here. They're not working for us. Okay, but they're thirsty and they're people. And they need a drink. This is the mindset. Was always like that. She could not live with herself not being a giver. I think there was a turning point in her jolliness, her happiness, her simchat chaim. It turned, I noticed it, when my grandmother Saftanu passed away. And I never saw my mom essentially recover from that. I never saw her recover because every time there was a sadness, it would always remind her of the sadness that she had of losing her mother. At one time, I found a song. It's an Arabic song, and I remembered it for many years. The song is called Ya Yuma. Ya Yuma basically means my mother. And I was like, oh, I think Ima's going to really like this song because it's a song that's going to remind her of her childhood. So I was in New York, and I picked up the phone, and I was like, Ima, I wanted you to hear this song. And I played the song for about 10 seconds, and then I realized I made a terrible mistake because she was not stopping to cry. And she just cried and cried and cried, and my dad couldn't calm her down. Nobody could calm her down. The pain that she felt. I remember when she would come to New York for the holidays, she was so happy. She was the happiest person in the world. She would come and we would celebrate together. It was Pesach, it was Sukkot. And she would spend time and she would come to the Beit HaKnesset, and this is my son. And she was so happy. Sukkot, she would see how beautiful the Kirat Avodat Hashem, our community is in Fresh Meadows, and how we would have a nice event outside and give out brachot and families. And she would have such knowledge. You just sit there looking and enjoying. I would speak to her on the phone, and I would say, Ima, titpaleli alenu. I always told her, titpaleli, ani mitpalelet, ani itpalel, 100%, always. As a matter of fact, I came 2 months ago to visit my mother. It was September, and I said, Ima, titpaleli alenu, because I knew that her tefillot always were powerful. I always knew that if Ima prays for me, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to be matzliach. And she said, Ani mitpalelet. I already knew that she wasn't able to read. 2 months ago, she wasn't able to read anymore. Already for maybe a half a year, maybe even a year. And she would take the Tehillim and she would sit there and she would just point. And she would turn the page and point. It was just, that's what she did. That's just what I read Tehillim. I don't know how to read anymore. I forgot how to read. But I'm going to sit there with the Tehillim. And she did it with such an excitement. Her tefillot were answered. I'll tell you, the last time she was in New York was the last Sukkot, a year and a half ago. And she asked me, she almost always, this was like a routine, when she would come to New York, she says, I want to go to the Ohel. Ima, wherever you want to go, I'm taking you. She would go, she said to me, I want to go to the Ohel because my granddaughter, Dahan, she needs to get married, and I want her to get married. And I want to go to pray for her. I was like, Ima, I'm taking you, no problem. I took my Abba, my Ima, we went to the Ohel. I would sit, I would learn, and they would go to the kever and they would pray. It was that Sukkot that Dahan found her husband Netanel and started dating, and soon after we heard Mazal Tov, she's engaged and getting married. Tefillot of a tzaddiket. It was barur to me that those tefillot had a powerful impact. The heart that she had was on everybody. Every person was in her heart. Their problems were her problems. I remember my uncle Dudi, whenever he went through something, it was like my mother was going through. Ma'im Dudi. אני לא יודעת מה יהיה עם דודי. אני ממש מפחדת. אני רוצה שהוא יצליח. I want him to succeed. I want him to go. She would pray for him. She would pray for all the grandkids. She would pray. I remember Bizmano when Dod Yaakov used to live in our house, and he was a ben bait in this kira, Yaakov Daniel, and she took him in like her own son. She brought him. He says to me, I remember he told me, it's bizchut your mother and your father that I was chozer b'tshuva. It's bizchut the love and the care. He lived in Israel until age 40. And he wasn't even yet married. He came to America, he stayed at their homes, he came, participated in this keilah over here, and slowly but surely he grew in Torah, he started keeping Shabbat, started keeping all of the mitzvot, went to Eretz HaKodesh, got married in his kollel, learning, and all his kids are on the way of Derech HaTorah. Why? Because there was a warmth in the home. Rabbi Krauss mentioned one of her major zechuyot is being able to teach in Torah Emet. It's an incredible zechut to teach the young Benot Israel. It was a zechut in both directions. She had a major zechut and they had a major zechut in having my mother, who was such a warm person. The warmth is tofeach al minat le'atfiach. It's a warmth that she didn't just give over to others, she gave it over to others that they are able to have the warmth to give over to others. That's how she would give it over. And I remember like the level of sensitivity. One time, this is when I was much younger, but she used to work, as Rabbi Krauss mentioned, with Mora Esther. He was also a very incredible person. Tibadir Haim Tovim Amen. And Mora Esther, as far as I remember, would run a class like a tight ship. Like it was structured. It was run properly. Like there wasn't. Am I right? Yeah, I'm pretty right, I think. Right? And one of the rules of the class is the children had to bring bread, because you needed to have bread in order for there to be Birkat Hamazon. And sometimes it would happen that they didn't bring bread. I don't know exactly what the rules were after that, but I do remember that my mother always used to bring from home a box of matzot. She said, why should they have to not have bread and not be like everybody else and not say the Birkat Hamazon? I'm going to bring a box of matzot. She would bring a box. You don't have bread? She would give them matzot. Always. Just that simat lev. Why should she be punished? I don't want her to be punished. I want her to have matzot. You could say hamotzi on this. Halacha lema'aseh for Sfaradim is different, but one of the lines that also resonated with her very powerfully, and she would be very proud of, she would say, El hanar hazeh itpalalti. And she would say it with the whole Navi in the background. The whole story of Shmuel and Hannah, and how Shmuel was moreh halacha lifnei Rabbo, and how Eli HaKohen said that he should not be living, and how Hannah was promised by Eli that she'd have even a better son, and she says to him, El hanar hazeh itpalalti. That whole episode would run in her head when she would say those words. El hanar hazeh itpalalti. This is the child I wanted. My good friend, Rabbi Moshe Vasogi, would remind me of this story. We were in the car together in high school, and one time we were having a conversation what we're going to do post-high school. And we were talking about yeshivot, college, and I said, I'm not going to yeshiva. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go to UCLA, I'm going to get a degree, and I'm going to make a lot of money. And my mom heard that. She was driving us, and she turns to Moshe. She says, Moshe, al takshiv lo. Don't listen to him. הוא הולך לישיבה, והוא יהיה רב גדול. He's going to go to yeshiva and he's going to be a big Rav. That was her resolve. You would think, if you knew my mother and how much she loved me, and that relationship was so, it encompassed everything. Ben zikunim. You would think that sending me off to yeshiva would be incredibly difficult, and I'm sure it was. But every time I would pick up the phone to call her, she would never express the difficulty. It was always support. Leo, תעשה מה שנכון. תעשה מה שטוב לך. זה חשוב. אתה עושה את הדבר הנכון. You're doing the right thing. Continue in your way. How she personally felt, how difficult was it for her to have her son, always thinking about him 3,000 miles away. It's not important. The right thing is important. And for as long as you need it, for whatever amount of time, it's a real love. It was a love that was built on emet. She never would tell me. You know when I realized fully how much pain she was in that I was distant? Only in the last 2 years. Because due to the dementia, it was hard for her to control her emotions. And every time I would pick up the phone, she would just start crying. She couldn't stop. It was hard for me to call because I can't see her that way. And I realized it's not that now she feels this way. It was always. It's just she was able to hold it in. And now she's not. And that showed me the mesirut nefesh that she had, commitment to Torah. The first week I went to yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, I don't know how many people know this, probably nobody, but I was crying. I couldn't, I was so homesick. I wanted to come back. I didn't want to stay. I was so homesick. And I would call up Ima, I would cry to her. I would tell her, I don't want to stay, I need to book a ticket, I need to get out. As a mother hears that from her son, she knew how to be mechazik me. She knew how to strengthen me. Leo, you're going to succeed. Don't worry. Atidag. Just take it one day at a time. The ability that even though it probably was crushing her inside, aval atidag, that mesirut nefesh is a commitment to Torah. As a matter of fact, I do believe that that emotion I put in a ball and I would use it every single day. I'd say, I'm not here to play games in yeshiva. Because if I want, I could just be home. And I miss my home so much, and I'm still here because there's somebody there that wants me to succeed, that loves me, that cares for me, that is willing to sacrifice for me. I'm not wasting my time. And that's what gave me the merits, the ability to fight every single day. Blood, sweat, and tears, to be able to learn and to be shoked at datot Torah. It was that koach that she imbued, that she put into me. It's something I have no doubt in my head that part of her certainly prayed. Maybe people are asking, I'm not. Maybe in people's minds, in the subconscious, how could such a thing happen? I will tell you. This woman was so selfless that I don't have a single doubt in my mind that she prayed that if this son of hers has avonot, ba'avonotai rabim, a punishment that should fall on him should come to me. Ve'ani omer lachem, that's the type of person she was. I'm not a tzaddik. I'm not a hasid. I have avonotai rabim. And she prayed that anything that should befall upon me should happen to her. She's a tzaddikit. That was her elanah razeit palalti, to protect her son that she prayed for. That nothing should happen to him. שיבוא עליי. What was her emunat chachamim was unparalleled. My wife was telling me a story before she knew her well. They were at the kitchen together, and my wife said, oh, she started talking to her about broccoli. My mom said, "Ze lo kasher bishvili." What? Broccoli? What's wrong with broccoli? Lo, ze lo kasher bishvili. No, but they have kosher types. They have ones that are like checked. Lo, Arav Amar. As bishvili ze lo kasher. That's how she would be. And then my wife said, maybe ask the Rav if it has a chshel that it was pre-checked. Maybe then it's good. Oh, ani yachola lish'ol. Aval b'intayim ze lo kasher bishvili. That's how she was. Emunat chachamim to the highest level. The amount of courage that it takes when you have a family, an extended family, that every single one of them, essentially more or less, especially in those times, is not so religious. Not even close. The social pressure that created, and the omitz lev, the courage of the heart of my mother to say, no, we're going to keep Shabbat. No, we're going to cover our hairs. No, we're gonna be a Torah family. And we're gonna send our kids to yeshivot. And we're gonna make sure and be makpid on the Torah and the mitzvot, is a courage that can't be explained in words. It's what she wanted, and she had the resolve to carry it through. Hachnasat orchim, everybody knows how many Yad Avraham in the heyday, how many people would come from Eretz Yisrael. We had Rabbanim in our house all the time. We had Rabbanim in our homes all the time. I remember Mitali Zichronah Livracha's wedding. An entire family from Eretz Yisrael came. Wow, so many people showed up. And they were all in the home. Saba Daniel would come every year. Ani ba lebiti Gila. I'm coming for Gila. Every single year. He had other sons there, but he's coming for Gila. That was it. That was the home. It was the hub of Los Angeles, was there. Rav Shkalim, at the Levaya of my sister, he said, אני רוצה לספר לך סיפור. תגיד את זה לאבא שלך ולאמא שלך. כן, מה הסיפור? רב שקלים said that בזכותך, בזכות אמא שלך, אנחנו מוכרים פתיחת ההיכל של הפרנסה במנחה. מה קשור? What's the relevance? He said, no, one time it was mincha, and your mom, it was Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, she got up and she said, אני רוצה לקנות פתיחת ההיכל. He said, no, we don't sell פתיחת ההיכל, only during the Musaf and Arvit, פתיחת ההיכל for פרנסה. He said, אבל אני רוצה לקנות. So Rav Shkalim said, בסדר. And he said, he said that if it's going to yeshivot, if it's going to Talmud Torah, בסדר. From then on, all of his ptichat ha'echal from mincha is bizchuta. He wanted me to share that with Abba and with Ima, bizmano, that the ptichat ha'echal was there because that was the type of person she was. I'll tell you the tmimut, the sincerity that she had. I'll say you a few examples of her sincerity. In my house, we have a toy where it's like all these animals, like little tiny animals. The kids play with them, and one of the animals was a notoriously not kasher animal. Davar ahir. And she saw that and she was always uncomfortable. Ima, זה לא אמיתי. It's not real. She's like, לא, אבל זה לא צריך להיות בבית. I was like, but it's not real. There's other not kasher animals. No, it shouldn't be here. This is a timimut, unbelievable. Like the level of sensitivity that she had. Sometimes she would leave a voicemail, and it was so cute. Like you would hear the voicemail, how would it start? So you would say, "לא, אני לא רוצה לשמוע את זה. אני רוצה שהוא יענה." Like she was talking to the voicemail. Like the voicemail says, "Lior, Dahan is not here right now. Please leave." לא. שיענה. It's like I'm having a conversation with it. One time we were in New York in Manhattan, and I was taking her around a little bit. They came for one of the Chagim. I said, you know what, I'll take them. I'll show them a little bit here, a little bit there. We were in downtown, and they have this big, like massive gold bull. You ever seen it? In Manhattan, there's this big gold bull. They have it in the Wall Street stock market over there. So she looks at it, she's like, Mazeh. So I wanted to make like a joke. I was like, oh, זה העגל הזהב של אמריקה. She says, עגל הזהב. She looks at it like with a stern face. She says a curse word in Arabic, and then she says, אני לא נוגעת בו. I'm not touching it. I'm not even going to look at it. She started walking away. It's a timimut. She's heard עגל הזהב, and that was it for her. This thing is pasul for the rest of time. There's a story about Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik when he first arrived in Eretz HaKodesh. There was an excitement, obviously. It's a revelvo, the Brisker Rav, somebody very big, comes to Yerushalayim, Eretz HaKodesh. So all the Talmidei Chachamim, all the Bnei Yeshivot gathered in his home. And they started speaking with him, Divrei Torah, Divrei Halacha. Incredible. There was one great man standing in the next room, holding a bag. His name is the famous Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer. And some of the students noticed that he wasn't walking in. So they said, Kavod Rav, why is the Rav not walking in? He said to them, I'm just waiting for everybody to leave and then I want to speak to the Grizz privately. He said, I was going to wait outside. Torah mi bachutz ve'anu mi bifnim. They called everybody, all the students, Rabotai, everybody out. Rav Isser Zalman wants to talk to the Brisker Rav in private. So Be'emet, everybody started packing out. One student was very interested. He was curious to see what's going on over here. So he pretended like he was leaving. He hid under one of the desks. What does he hear? So the Brisker Rav, oh, Rav Isser Zalman, how are you doing? Rav Isser Zalman takes out the bag, brown bag, takes out a sandwich. He says, I know the Kvod Rav probably has not yet refreshed his memory from the Ilchot Tumot U'Maasot. I wanted to bring you an olive sandwich. All of the Maasot and Tumot I did myself. Here, take. He says, oh, you don't know what you did. I've been starving for a day and a half. You know the Briskers, they're very machmir. Until they go ahead, they have to sit Sivani Kiyim. Until they do the Ilchot Maasot Tumot. It's like, so you mehayeh, you brought me to life. It took a great man, Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, to notice when nobody else was able to notice. There are some people in the world that have a koach, that know how to help, that know what needs to be done. So that reminds me of my dear Rabbi Shimon Gabbai. He's such a man. Be'emet is such a person. Amen. But my mother had that koach, where she was able to know how to help, even sometimes better than you. I would say, Ima, lo tzarich, lo tzarich, lo tzarich. She would say, tzarich, tzarich, tzarich. And it ended up being tzarich. She was right. She was right, I was wrong. She knew how to help. Most of all, ahava oti lelo gvul. The love that she had for me, for Oshrat, for all of her children, it was to no end, to no end, to no end. There was I think maybe, there was one person that she for sure loved more than me. That was Tira, my wife. Like anytime it would come up that I would say in the conversation, I would say, Ima, יכול להיות, מה שאשתך אומרת, זה הנכון. אתה תעשה כמו אשתך. You'll do like your wife, whatever she says. She had such a love. It's like, usually mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, not necessarily. The Gemara talks about how they don't necessarily get so along, but she was able to make it work. And not only make it work, with Ahava and Simcha, my wife never felt anything less than a tremendous amount of love. Even after I went to yeshiva, I came back, I was like, Ima, look, I improved so much. She was worried that I shouldn't, chas v'shalom, think that before I went to yeshiva I was bad. Ata tamid hayita tov. You were always good. Now you're better, but you were always good. Ima. It says in the Navi, Ki ish asher imo tinachamenu, ken anochi anachimchem. The pasuk tells us that when a person is comforted, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to comfort us like a man is comforted by his mother. And it got me to think, the comfort of a mother is like nothing else. Who could be minachem better than an ima? An ima knows how to have a soft touch. She knows how to speak with her child. The child resonates with the ima. Ki ish asher imo tinachamenu. I don't have an ima anymore to be menachem oti, but I have a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ken anochi anachimchem u'v'Yerushalayim tinuchamu. We should have that nechama. One of the times I remember was when Ima was menachem on the passing of my grandfather Saba Betzalel, who was probably before the passing of Mitad, the only time I saw my father cry. And I remember the house, it was in Ethel, and it was the room, and my father was there, and he heard the news, and my mother was next to him, and she was comforting him. The comfort of Ki'ish Asher Imot Tenachamenu. One of the things that will stay with me, the most simple things, sometimes we have to learn a lesson. The simple things in life is what stays with you. But when I was a child, 5, 6, 7 years old, I would ask my mother, Ima, ani rotzeh tuck me in and sing me a song. The tucking me in with such love, such devotion, the singing of the song, I still remember the songs. It developed me. It gave me an ahava. It gave me such a love to be able to give to others. Her last request, which she told me already a few years ago. She said, when I pass away, Leo, I want you to do for me what you did for your father-in-law, Alon. I want you to go to Eretz Israel, and I want you to bury me there. I said, Ima, I didn't really want to talk about Acharei 120, but I said, of course I'm going to do it. Ma she'ela, of course. No, I want you to tell me that for sure you're going to do it. Ima, for sure I'm going to do it. 100%. And Rabotai, ani matzhir hayom, that this mitzvah that I now have, this last mish'ala, this last request, that she asked for me to do, I say l'shem yichud, in every step that I take, that I should be able to be mekayem this mitzvah and fulfill my mother's wishes. She was such a great woman. She was such a loving woman. We're going to miss her terribly. But we have the nechama of Yerushalayim, the nechama of the family, Baruch Hashem. My greatest nechama is seeing my sister's children, my own children, Oshrat, and her children. Such a nechama to see that olamach ra'it b'chayech. My mother was zochet to see the whole empire she built in her lifetime and its success. Ima, Ima, אני אוהב אותה. I love you so much. פילה המוות לנצח ומחד אולי תבעה ועל כל פנים יהי זכרה ברוך.
בעם נחש עומר, רצה כמות שנאמר, אנו יחד בשמע צדקו, הרגיל תורה,
גדל והתקדש שמי רבה, ואלמן נברא כמותה ואמיר חפותה ועצמה וכהל ויקרב לשמעי, וחי יכול בית ישראל, רק בזמן קריב אמרו אמן, שמי רבה מלאה.
אלא מכל בחשב. על ישראל.
Tomorrow morning, the Aron will be leaving Cheva Kadisha at 9 a.m. towards the